Good morning, everybody. This is a tropical update on Tropical Storm Melissa, which is threatening the Greater Antilles this weekend, and will be bringing significant impacts going into next week across Haiti, Cuba, and most importantly Jamaica, where it could make a pretty devastating landfall in about 3 days' time. We're watching this system characterized currently by a central dense overcast structure with some rotation there, probably attempts at developing a bit of a core now that it's kind of aligned with the low level circulation there. We can probably see some cloud lines being made about just about there ish, but obviously you got that mid-level circulation becoming very robust there. That's the low level, so that's the mid-level circulation center, and probably low level circulation center just there ish. Still dealing with some westerly shear. We can see some transverse banding there on the west side of the circulation of the central dense overcast. There you can see transverse banding, northwesterly, westerly shear, still prevalent over the system, but it is getting better organized, and currently the National Hurricane Center estimates the system to be near hurricane status at high-end tropical storm, 60 knots, maximum winds, with a minimum central pressure of 986 millibars, supported by some of the recon data that we got over the course of the night. So, we got this nice structure, obviously very much close to hurricane status. We see that close organization, probably a core developing under there, as I've said. We also see some cirrus going that way, some nice upper level outflow, which is a benefit of its current environment and supporting its steady intensification rate as we speak right now. We also see some nice banding over there within the periphery. It's got quite a large influence the storm does right now, and some of this banding, including the edge of the central dense overcast there, will be part of the pretty significant rainfall that comes onto the peninsula of Haiti down there in south of Haiti, and also parts of the Dominican Republic. We see this banding will probably be extending that way over the course of the next few hours, and probably even days, as it remains within the vicinity of these islands as Melissa moves that kind of on a track like this, and then goes that way over Cuba after making landfall in Jamaica, moving northeast. It will be in the vicinity of Haiti for quite a bit of time, and there will be a very long-lasting heavy rainfall threat. And just to discuss this heavy rainfall threat a bit more, we got this 4-day rainfall forecast issued by the Weather Prediction Center at the International Desk. And yeah, again, as I've said, we got this very significant rainfall risk on the peninsula there, 20 to 30 inches, 500 to 750 millimeters of rainfall, and a more widespread area of oranges and yellow, which will be 4 to 6 to 8 inches of rainfall spreading across southern Haiti, southern Dominican Republic, 8 to 12 inches down on this peninsula in the Dominican Republic. As a whole, Hispaniola will be drenched and will have very, very significant heavy rainfall impacts, particularly along this area as a result of the topography, which is actually quite mountainous. And given the kind of low quality of life and low level of development in this region, I do see some significant effects are very highly possible, and interest there should really be watching, doing any final preparations and heading to the safest place that they can, because heavy rainfall, flooding, and also storm surge are actually one of the leading impacts and factors to death in tropical cyclone impacts. So it's very, very critical that we listen to any local meteorological service advice, any information, and we do take precautions. Impacts here are going to be quite significant, even if the system doesn't near as a hurricane, doesn't actually end up making landfall, which in this case it won't probably make landfall in Haiti. If we follow the kind of trace of this rainfall, it will be moving west, south of Jamaica, then over Jamaica, and over through Cuba. But as I said, it will remain in the vicinity, and areas in the vicinity can still get heavy rainfall impacts, as obviously evident here. We do have a prediction for very heavy rainfall across Haiti's southern peninsula there. But I do want to also draw attention specifically to Jamaica. It's very, very, very significant impacts are likely there as well. A much wider area of 20 to 30 inches of rainfall, with the probability actually pretty notable probability for over 30 inches, 750 millimeters of rainfall, across Jamaica's eastern part of the island and mountainous terrain, which again, this is all mountainous terrain, so the risk is even much more significant, and there is a real threat to life here for rainfall impacts. In the case of Jamaica as well, we got this nice helpful map from the Pacific Disaster Center that outlines the inland flood zone and exposure risk. And we got quite a lot of low-lying areas here, which are actually quite liable, quite vulnerable to flooding. We can see this part, lots of scattered parts. This part of the island. We see some kind of gaps within the mountainous terrain where we got vulnerabilities to flooding as well, but we also got large chunks of vulnerable areas to down by the south here near the coast. And conveniently for the storm and impacts wise, which would not be convenient for anyone on this island, and especially in this area, the storm track prediction by the National Hurricane Center follows this kind of path right smack bang through there, so the eye would be probably going over these areas, and therefore you'd probably get very, very significant rainfall across these zones. And also, let's not forget storm surge from the hurricane as it goes through this area. Overall, I mean, the whole island's probably likely to be hit very hard by storm surge rainfall, heavy winds. We're going to get widespread impacts, all sorts of hazards across Jamaica from a very powerful hurricane that moves through early next week. So something to really keep an eye on. If you are living in these areas, please get out. I cannot stress enough how bad this hurricane is going to be. I'm going to dive more into the specific numbers and the predictions by various model guidance and the National Hurricane Center in a second. But I can tell you that this is not looking really good for Jamaica. We're looking at something pretty remarkable and memorable in terms of impacts. There's been some people saying that they're going to be able to cope because they've done this before, they've gone through this before, but one thing I will say is that we haven't had a very strong hurricane hit Jamaica from the south in quite some time, and certainly we haven't had a strong hurricane actually make landfall in some time either. The last time that that's happened was Gilbert 1988, which was over 30 years ago, and also the intensity that Melissa could really get to is actually quite remarkable in itself as well. I'll go into the model guidance and discuss that in a second, but please be aware that this is nothing to take lightly. We're going to have some pretty significant impacts over the next few days across Jamaica and actually the Greater Antilles as a whole. So, one thing I want to do first initially though, before we get into model guidance and the predictions, is actually the current structure analysed by reconnaissance aircraft, which actually went into the system a few hours ago. We'll focus on the Air Force data that we ended up getting from over 4 hours ago. And we do see a slight deepening in the pressure here at the 533, ending at 533 Z. So over the course of the night, we have a gradual decrease in the pressure from 996 to 989. There is a sond of 989 here that we can analyse a bit deeply. We got this nice vertical kind of V structure, but it's also a little dry. We have to keep a note. It's not too bad though. We do have 989 millibars there, 27 knots, which if using a standard reduction factor of 1 millibar for every 10 knots of wind, we could round that up to 30 knots, and you could probably estimate a 986 millibar central pressure at this time, which is exactly what we ended up having as an estimate for the 6E position. Yep, you can see there. So there is some steady intensification finally happening after decades, what feels like decades of stagnation over the course of a few days. There hasn't been much intensification going on, not much organisation, but finally we are nearing hurricane status, and we do have a nice 986 millibar central pressure estimate. And yeah, as we see, gradual organisation of the low-level circulation centre and gradual alignment of the mid-level and low-level circulations here. You can see the tail Doppler radar from the NOAA recon mission that happened a bit earlier, so this was just under 9 hours ago. We can see a low-level circulation centre here. Just looking at the wind barbs, the dark ones are 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers for a shade of grey, and a lighter shade of grey for 10 kilometers. Let's look at the mid-level circulation centre. Mid-level circulation centre is slightly, it's there, and the higher circulation centre, upper level circulation centre, would be somewhere like, I'm just trying to look closely as I do this, we're probably looking at something like there, I'd say. So there is this kind of not too much alignment, at least at this time, but if we look at the infrared satellite loop here, we do see that there is this wrapping, vigorous wrapping convection, and we do kind of see this wrapping down shear a little bit, or should I say up shear, sorry, where we have this low level circulation center around there, and we have this mid level circulation center there. It is wrapping, shear is slowly starting to decrease, and there is a bit of organisation happening, as I did say, and that's reflected with the strengthening, lowering of pressures, increasing of winds. So it's not doing too bad right now. We are seeing some organisation, and it is probably likely to get to hurricane status today, later today, with rapid intensification coming soon after. We'll be looking closely at that now, if we look at the environment. First of all, we'll begin looking at the ocean heat content. It is the warmest ocean heat content in the basin that Melissa will be tracking over. The Caribbean at this part of the season, late season, will have the most oceanic heat content, as it doesn't have to deal with frontal systems in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Southwest Atlantic. Those frontal systems will start dipping in and start eroding some of that ocean heat content, but also just change of seasons. Nothing will be able to sustain that, those warm waters, and those warm waters will be limited down deeper into the tropics. So Melissa does have that advantage. It is in the nice area of ocean heat content. We're looking at something above 150 units there. Kilojoules centimeters squared. We're looking particularly in the southwest Caribbean there, south of Jamaica, where Melissa will be passing over. If I had to draw kind of a rough track of where Melissa will be moving over, so we're like probably somewhere there, and that's a bit too far of a turn. That like this. It will be bordering on the highest oceanic heat content in the basin, but nonetheless, where it is right now and where it will be undergoing rapid intensification, we're looking at above 100 to 150 kilojoules per centimeter squared of oceanic heat content. That is very significant and will be very supportive of a broad, large, monsoonal but powerful storm that will be moving slowly. Oceanic heat content in these kind of situations is very important to avoid significant impacts onto the system from upwelling, which reduces the sea surface temperatures and can actually backfire on the system if it does try to intensify. So it's good that we do have a lot of heat there, oceanic heat for utilization for intensification, which we are likely to see. As a result, we need to closely watch this environment because it will be highly conducive despite the shear. Now, if I had to look at what it's currently doing right now, again, we got this nice outflow. I did mention the cirrus that was happening in the infrared imagery there not too long ago. We got this nice divergence there with this passing trough that's coming by. I can't draw properly, sorry. Can't draw to save my life. But you can see that trough there, those upper level winds. We do see that divergence being amplified as a result. This trough will now move away, and the system isn't likely to get picked up by this trough and will take this track that way towards Jamaica, and then through it, and then through Cuba. Once another trough comes by, I'll look at the model guidance in a second. I'll show you guys how that's going to play out. But right now, the environment isn't too bad. As I said, we're probably likely to see strengthening into a hurricane later today because of this environment isn't actually too bad. It is doable, and it is only expected to get a little bit better. So it won't be too bad for Melissa. it will be strengthening a little bit faster later today, and rapid intensifications should actually be ensuing. Right, these are the soundings. Finally, I get to look at the model guidance and explain to you guys what is actually happening in terms of the inner core and the shear dynamics. So, currently we have this displaced kind of mid-level relative humidity structure, as you can see there, away from the low-level circulation center, but no problem, that is aligning. No need to worry about that, at least for Melissa's sake. Initializer a bit low, that is the ECMWF, it sometimes does that, but nonetheless, we are already starting to see intensification at this time. We see that shear is, well, at least deep player shear is sitting at 10 knots right now, so we can see it's actually reduced a little bit. At least max shear as well, max shear, let's note that in particular. The deep player shear, rather consistent at 10 knots, but the max shear is coming down, particularly across the mid-levels. It is coming down, it is supporting intensification of the system. It does go up slightly, there are some fluctuations. The shear does remain somewhat moderate, but again, we must consider that there is upper level outflow, which is strongly supporting the system, and there is good oceanic heat content and sea surface temperatures that will be contributing to intensification of the storm, despite the persistent westerly shear that will be fighting against the system. The shear does get a little bit better, as you can see here, and there is some intensification. If we look at the last run, by the way, so if we look at the 18Z run, we do actually see a higher intensity. That shear does get a bit lower for Melissa, and it is able to actually make use of the lower shear, the outflow, and the sea surface temperatures to intensify to a much stronger peak of 950 millibars here on this run. It doesn't actually intensify that much on this run. We are going to see run-to-run variation. There is actually quite a lot of uncertainty with the evolution of a Melissa still, especially with it not being fully aligned right now in real time. We'll have to constantly monitor forecasts and see what happens. But also we have to keep in mind that the ECMWF, despite its higher resolution and everything, it does sometimes, and actually quite often, more than not, it fails to actually model the evolution, and particularly when it comes to intensification, it fails to model intensification properly within tropical cyclones. Sometimes it does go quite often a lot weaker than it actually should. So it doesn't surprise me that it's going with these fluctuations and it's staying a bit high, going near high 960s really in terms of pressure. Intensification does happen. It doesn't really do so too much this time. The shear remains high, or higher, I should say. Although you'd have some conducivity, if that's even a word, it'd be a bit more conducive for intensification here. It wouldn't be so fast. At least with the ECMWF, it isn't going so quickly. It will probably go a bit faster than this. This is only one model solution. I will now show you the HAFS model runs, the regional hurricane model runs, and show to you guys some of the higher end solutions. That is the wrong system, sorry about that. 13L, we see this, and yeah, this is the end of the run, don't worry about this, but if we're looking before Jamaica here, we're seeing a high end intensity 924 millibars. We're looking at category 5, borderline category 5 hurricane there, at least in terms of winds measured here. This is a category 5 hurricane. We're looking at 105 knots here, 145. Very strong hurricane. And yeah, it just goes to show that, you are going to have some disagreement within the models, but there is potential for something quite high. If we just zoom out a bit and we go onto the parent view of the HAFSB, we can see that there's that upper level outflow which I discussed. Even though that trough does pass by and it goes away a little bit, it is rather close to the subtropical jet still, as is usual for this time of year. And we do see that upper level divergence is still around, and it will continue to support intensification, especially when that shear does go down a little bit. It will be good. It will be really conducive for Melissa, and again, that is why we're going to see some rapid intensification. This environment isn't all actually that bad. See, that upper level outflow does remain, and as it nears Jamaica, starts going through it. As that trough comes by, I'll talk about the trough in a second, as I said, I will do, but we see As that trough comes by, we do have that amplification of upper level outflow even more, and yeah, we do see that intensification reach almost Category 5 hurricane status. Once passed through Jamaica, we will see some land interaction, put a bit of a hindrance, and it will weaken a little bit. It will weaken Melissa a little bit, but it will have the opportunity to re-strengthen before Cuba, because that upper level divergence is still there, and that oceanic heat content remains high in that region. For generally most of the Caribbean Sea is filled with high oceanic heat content. Wherever it goes, oceanic heat content should be good and highly conducive for intensification. Cuba will be again another land interaction hindrance. It will weaken it again, and by this time, once it moves through the Bahamas, and even as it's doing so, as it interacts with the jet and the trough, we're going to see some increase in shear. Although it will accelerate, we will continue to see shear coming in, this time from the southwest, and it will keep the system weakening, but it will only weaken slowly, because again, we got that upper level outflow, and it is moving fairly quickly, so shear isn't actually too detrimental, but it is starting to get detrimental to the point where there is going to be some weakening going on. And at this time, it's approaching Bermuda with a potential threat there. But obviously, that's that's after it passes through Cuba and the Bahamas, which I'm going to advise as well. You guys must prepare. Very important. We're looking at about Category 4 here, intensity. Highly probable that we get some significant impacts there as well. As I said, the Greater Antilles, for the most part, are going to be at threat here. Lots of impacts. Slow-moving storm, high intensity. You know, we must not treat this lightly. All of the region should be watching this closely. There's also quite a lot of track uncertainty. If we go to track, this is the 6C initialized track. Some of them are 0Z runs, but nonetheless are fairly valid for this time. And we can see that there is this slow-moving nature of Melissa curve northwards now as that trough picks up. And yeah, northeastward movement through Cuba and the Bahamas towards Bermuda, and increasing track spread after day 5, which is completely normal. As we get closer in time, we'll be able to get a bit of a better depiction of what the kind of situation is with track after it moves through Jamaica and towards Cuba, the Bahamas, and the open Atlantic. Now, we'll go back onto after we move on to the deterministic models here now, we'll be able to talk a bit about the steering and what the steering pattern is. In fact, if I move into a bit of a more zoomed in view for the Western Atlantic, let's look at the geopotential height anomalies. And first of all, we'll focus on the GFS, the ECMWF. We'll look at the ECMWF ensemble here as well. It will give us a better depiction of the kind of general consensus within that ensemble. We'll also look at the other ones. And yeah, we kind of got this idea. We have the ECMWF ensemble here. And if we just draw a little bit here, we see that we have obviously the initialized system here, that's 12Z. We just look back a bit, there's not much difference here. We got this bridge here. And this bridge is building in here that we got this long wave trough there, which was initially picking the system up with this gap in the ridging there. That ridging is going to extend shortly over just to the north of Melissa, and that trough isn't going to be able to pick up Melissa initially, so that will be resulting in a westward motion towards Jamaica like has been expected over the past few days. And then that ridge to the north shortly breaks down. We got this trough over the continental United States moving eastwards, and this ridge over here is breaking down. It's not there anymore, or at least it's going to be much weaker, and once it reaches the south of Jamaica, we see this trough is now over Florida and the southeast. We're going to start getting Melissa picked up here. And that's why it's moving this way. Now, if we want to look at the uncertainty between the runs here, really, with regards to this kind of pattern evolution, there is a bit of a spread between the members, but the pattern is generally consistent across the runs. We haven't been expecting anything else. We've been expecting this kind of turn to the northeast for quite a while. This trough has always been around in the model guidance. So, with regards to other solutions like going this way, or like probably even going to Haiti, the confidence for that has been slashed essentially. We are expecting high confidence, at least for a westward initial track, maybe northwestwards, but even that's decreasing. Westward track initially, and then yeah, we have that trough moving in, and we have that sudden shift to the northeast, where we'll move over Cuba and over that way to move against into the open Atlantic, into a region where it will be less land, but Bermuda might still be a threat. Halves, with regards to the halves model, let's get out of this initially. We can see here, if we look at the 500 millibar vorticity, again we have that kind of westward shift, westward movement as a result of this ridge. If we look at the bars here, at the barbs, this ridge is there, weak, but it is there. It's enough to take Melissa westwards initially before we see this vorticity maxima associated with this trough moving eastwards, and that ridge ends up breaking down enough for Melissa to get picked up and sent after it. So we do have good confidence on the general track and the areas that we're probably going to be seeing affected in the near term. Cuba is most likely going to get a landfall. Jamaica almost certainly, as Melissa gets steered northeastwards through them. The Bahamas, the Southern Bahamas should definitely be watching now as well, and Bermuda could be in the way as well, but a little bit uncertain on that. And with regards to intensity at that point by Bermuda, we're probably looking at something category 2, category 3. It'll be moving fairly quickly, and extratropical transition isn't likely to actually happen too quickly because phasing with the trough won't be too quick. Yeah, the pattern isn't really suitable for a rapid extratropical transition at this time, so Bermuda could still be getting a hurricane next weekend. We need to continue watching that and seeing what happens there, but we do have absolute certainty that we are probably going to get a strong hurricane going across the Antilles later this week, going into next week, sorry, given this movement, and the environment is actually quite conducive. Let's not forget that. Now, Google DeepMind again, just to show how favourable the environment is. This is a Google DeepMind FNV3 ensemble forecast. There's 50 members and the ensemble mean. And we can see that there is a very hefty amount of strong members. This is the 0Z run, but again, we've had actually quite a bit of consistency within this ensemble for quite a significant intensity. We can see here the majority of the members here actually do reach the kind of purple colour, which is category 5. Category 5 is 137 knots, and we can see the majority of the members actually do reach that intensity, as shocking as that sounds. And the reason I'm bringing up the Google DeepMind ensemble, and if anything for the first time on this channel, is that the fact that it is actually quite accurate. We've seen some latest, even with the latest testing, even with the kind of short time of experimentation with it, and it's only recently just gone operational, the Google DeepMind ensemble is surprisingly very accurate. You know, you do see these kind of tight, within most typhoons and most kind of tropical cyclones being predicted with this. You know, we do see that there is actually quite a tight spread between the ensemble members most of the time. With Melissa, that wasn't the case, but you know what? Nonetheless, there is actually quite a high track forecast accuracy within the ensemble, and to some extent actually for intensity as well. So this is why it's so notable, and I am going to point this out, because there is quite a good ceiling for Melissa to reach, and it's not outrageous either. Again, I've gone through the environment, the oceanic heat content, the upper level outflow, and the shear. As much as the shear is going to be around still, we will see some sort of rapid intensification most likely. Most of the guidance actually does point towards it, and logically speaking, within this kind of environment, rapid intensification is most certainly possible. We've seen it loads of times. So, very, very, very key to watch. That's why I said that Jamaica should be watching out. In fact, National Hurricane Center forecast does have it reaching major hurricane status for quite a long time. And if we look at the discussion, they do mention that that is Spanish discussion. Sorry, I can't read Spanish, but we do have a very high intensity forecasted. That is borderline Category 5. That is 135 knots forecast for afternoon of the 27th. So that will be Monday. It's absolutely critical that we take into account the high intensity solutions. As much as the ECMWF does get quite low, we got the HAFS models. If we look at the HAFS-A, again, we've got very high intensity solutions here, and the Google DeepMind as well with high accuracy. Loads of members going Category 5, and yeah, as I said, going back to track, we got that high certainty going through Jamaica, Cuba, the Bahamas, and going towards Bermuda. In fact, Bermuda is actually within the forecast envelope here, within the DeepMind ensemble. And given high track accuracy, again, Bermuda might need to watch out. It is within the guidance, even though you are beyond the 5-day period. It isn't actually too bad of an idea to be watching out. But again, I do want to reiterate the most significant areas that must be watching right now is Haiti, Cuba, the Bahamas, and Jamaica. Most certainly, you will be getting significant impacts within the next 5 days as a result of rainfall, direct storm core impacts, storm surge. Everything, all hazards threat really from Melissa, and it will be a powerful hurricane going through these regions over the next 5 days. It's absolutely critical to be watching. I did point out here. I'm not sure if I did actually point out earlier because I've kind of got a short-term memory, but here I am. We got low-lying areas here that really need to be watching out. Will we having Melissa move through? And yeah, those areas will be extremely prone for impact, storm surge, and heavy rainfall flooding. Again, these areas are very prone to significant impacts, and particularly when looking at areas across the globe like Jamaica and Haiti, we are having not very developed areas here, and areas in quite a bit of poverty, being hit by such a storm, and in areas of high terrain and obviously heavy rainfall come through, big risk of destruction, and as I hate to say it, as much as I hate to say it, death is likely if you do stay in those areas and you put yourself in that risk, because it is not safe. It is not safe. There is likely to be significant landslides, mudslides, heavy flooding, especially again in these inland flood zones. I would recommend you get out, evacuate, and find a safe place to get to. These areas are not safe. Again, I just want to point out again that this kind of threat that there is here and how bad this actually is. I've seen a lot of people on the internet say that Jamaica's actually used to hurricanes. They've been through it. The last direct major hurricane strike was by Gilbert in 1988, and that was over 30 years ago. Also at a weaker intensity than what Melissa's expected to be at landfall this time round. And nonetheless, Melissa is moving in from the south, and it is a slow-moving hurricane. Melissa is going to be a very, very dangerous hurricane for Jamaica, a very memorable one. And again, I advise everyone in Jamaica and even Haiti and Cuba, because it will be significant for them as well. You guys need to find a safe place, evacuate if you can. This will be a very, very destructive storm. And no, I hate to say it, but Jamaica's not used to this. Jamaica will see something that it's never seen before if it doesn't get its act together. Hurricane warnings are in place. Please follow advice of the local meteorological service. I'll project the forecast cone here. We have a very, very serious situation here. Very life-threatening impacts. Death is certainly possible. There is a life threat. There is a threat to life here. Over the next 5 days, Cuba, Jamaica, you will be seeing some significant impacts. So please keep monitoring information by your local meteorological service, and most certainly the National Hurricane Center, which is providing life-saving, official, professional information to keep everyone safe. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll have more information on Melissa going over the next few days. Keep in touch with me for any more in-depth meteorological discussions. But again, I want to reiterate that the National Hurricane Center is the official center for official information in the basin, so please follow them. And obviously for information dedicated to your area, please look at your National Meteorological Service and see impact products issued by them. It is completely unsafe. Make sure you follow impacts. Make sure you follow information for impacts. Absolutely critical to save your life, save lives of your family, property. Again, it's a dire situation. Okay, I cannot emphasize how dangerous it would be to stay and not abide by some of the information being provided. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll keep you guys updated. Please stay safe. I wish you all good luck, and we'll see what happens from here. Goodbye.